9:15 and stood alone under convenience store lights, staring at cereal boxes. No bodyguards, no assistant, just faded jeans and borrowed confidence. This wasn't his world. His world was glass towers where a nod shifted millions. For 15 years, he'd built an empire on precision, control, perfection, including the women at his side. Supermodels, celebrities, transactions wrapped in silk. Tonight, surrounded by fluorescent buzz and discount cereal, that certainty felt paper-thin. He picked up a box, put it down, picked up another. The cartoon mascot grinned mockingly. Lost or just really indecisive? The voice came from the front, light, sharp. He turned. The cashier watched him with amused patience. Her name tag read Grace. 6 hours into a double shift, but still had energy to find humor in his struggle. He cleared his throat. That obvious. You circled the same 3 aisles 4 times. She leaned against the counter. Either you're lost or conducting a very thorough investigation. Despite himself, smiled. I haven't done this in a while. Grocery shopping, what you have people for that? No malice, just observation. Something like that. She scanned his random selections, milk, wrong bread, desperate cereal grab with practiced efficiency. You look like someone who's used to other people handling details. No judgment, just, you've got that air. He raised an eyebrow. What air? The kind that walks into rooms expecting them to get quieter. She handed him change, fingers barely brushing his palm. But right now, you mostly just look confused, which is honestly refreshing. Something in his chest shifted. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without calculation? Grace didn't know his net worth, didn't know his last name. To her, he was just another customer confused by cereal options. Next time, she added, just ask. The good cereal's on the top shelf. What you grabbed is basically cardboard. He glanced at his bag. Thanks for the tip. No charge, she smiled genuinely. Though I might start a consulting fee if this becomes a habit. Walked out into humid air, bag in hand, feeling unmoored. In his car, parked blocks away, he sat without starting the engine, replaying the interaction, the teasing, the directness. For the first time in years, someone had seen him without seeing him. His penthouse when he returned felt empty. 68th floor, windows overlooking the city, art worth fortunes, silence. He set the groceries down and didn't open them. Instead, he stood at those windows, watching headlights, thinking about a woman who'd treated his confusion like something human. Morning arrived with its usual routine, expensive coffee, urgent emails, silent driver. By 9, sat at the conference table surrounded by executives who measured words like surgeons measured cuts. Quarterly reports, mergers, hostile takeovers. He guided everything with precision, but part of him kept drifting to aisle 5. His assistant noticed. She always did. You're distracted, she said after the meeting. I'm fine. You approved the acquisition without your usual questions. 7 years of working for him had sharpened her instincts. What's going on? That evening, he gave unprecedented instructions. Clear my schedule after 7. Blinked. Everything, sir. Everything. By 8 was back in the same parking lot, heart doing something unfamiliar. This was absurd. He commanded board meetings, made Forbes lists, dated Victoria's Secret models. Yet here he was, nervous about a convenience store. Grace looked up when he entered, recognition immediate. Back so soon. Did the cereal disappoint? Actually, I needed a few more things. Uh-huh. She eyed his purchases, batteries, gum, a car magazine. Very convincing. He laughed, really laughed. I'm that transparent. Like glass, she rang him up. $7.95 for my sparkling company. They talked easily about her overnight shift differential, online classes, dreams of opening something someday. Listened the way he hadn't in years, not calculating, just hearing. He noticed how she thanked every customer, straightened displays when no one watched, how exhaustion lived in her shoulders, but never her voice. As he left, she called out, "Same time tomorrow." He paused at the door. "Might need more batteries." "They're in aisle 7, she said, grinning. "Just so you know for next time." Walking back to his car, felt something uncomfortable settle in his chest. This had started as curiosity, as a test. He'd wanted to see if kindness existed without context, if genuine human connection was possible when you stripped away status and wealth and all the armor he'd built around himself. But somewhere between aisle 7 and the checkout counter, this stopped being an experiment. And that terrified him. The next evening, she spotted him before he made it halfway to the register. "You're becoming predictable," Grace said, not looking up from the inventory sheet she was checking. "That's dangerous for a man of mystery." "I'm not mysterious." "You're something." She finally met his eyes, and there was a thoughtfulness there he hadn't seen before. Most people don't come back this many times unless they're either extremely forgetful or extremely interested in something that has nothing to do with groceries. His heart kicked. Maybe I'm just extremely forgetful. Maybe, but her smile suggested she didn't believe him for a second. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. He'd arrive after 8 when the rush had faded. Sometimes bought things, sometimes didn't. Grace never questioned the fiction. They talked. She shared pieces of her life, sister in Portland, regular customer who paid in quarters, dreams of graphic design classes she wasn't sure she deserved. He offered carefully edited truths, worked in business, lived in the city, had spent years believing success meant keeping everyone at distance. One night, a customer exploded. Middle-aged man furious about energy drink prices, slamming his fist, calling Grace incompetent with casual cruelty. Grace handled it with devastating calm, apologized, fixed the price, his items with steady hands. When he left, she exhaled once and returned to work. Watching from nearby, felt something fierce surge through him. Does that happen often? Often enough. People carry their stress. Sometimes we're just standing in the way when they need to put it down. That doesn't bother you. She considered it. Sometimes, but getting angry back doesn't help. Most of the time, it's not really about me. The answer hit him like impact. In his world, anger was power. But Grace, making minimum wage taking abuse, had more grace than anyone in his boardroom. That night, sitting in his car long after the store closed, admitted something to himself. This wasn't observation anymore. This wasn't a social experiment or a philosophical exercise. This was connection. Real, messy, terrifying connection. And he was lying to the person he was connecting with. The thought sat in his stomach like lead. By the end of the month, his visits were no longer occasional. They were ritual. 5 nights a week, sometimes 6. He learned the rhythm of her schedule, the way her energy flagged around hour 7, the way certain songs on the store's radio made her lip sync when she thought no one was watching. One Thursday evening, he arrived to find her quieter than usual. The smile was there, but dimmer. When she rang up his items, actual groceries this time, he'd started actually cooking. Her movements were mechanical. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," but her voice carried weight. He waited. Years of negotiations had taught him the power of silence. She sighed. "Manager cut my hours for next month. Revenue projections or something. I'll figure it out, always do." Every instinct screamed to fix it, to make a phone call, to buy the damn store if that's what it took. Instead, he said, "I'm sorry, that's unfair." "That's life." She handed him his change. "Rent doesn't care about fairness." He wanted to tell her right then, wanted to confess everything, the penthouse, the company, the fact that he could solve her problems with a single transfer. But what would that do? How would she look at him when she realized he'd been pretending to be someone he wasn't? So he stayed quiet and hated himself for it. 2 days later, he brought her coffee. Just coffee. A good cup from the place 3 blocks over, still hot, with the kind of care that suggested someone had actually asked for her order instead of guessing. "You didn't have to do this," she said, but her smile was genuine. "I wanted to." She studied him over the rim of the cup, and something in her expression shifted. "You know what's funny? I've been working here for 3 years. You're the first person who's ever asked me how I take my coffee. The first person who's ever brought me any." His throat tightened. "That's not funny, that's sad." "Maybe both," she sipped, savoring. "Thank you, really." "Really," he echoed, and meant more than she could possibly know. Their conversations deepened after that, moved past surface observations into territories that felt dangerous and necessary. She talked about character, how you could measure someone by how they treated people who had nothing to offer them, about integrity being what you did when no one important was watching. Each word was a knife because she was describing the exact test he'd set up, the exact deception he was maintaining. And the longer it continued, the more the truth felt like betrayal. One night, after she'd shared a story about her father teaching her to be kind even when kindness wasn't returned, asked the question that had been haunting him. "Do you think people can change? Really change, not just perform change?" Grace looked at him for a long moment. "I think people can grow. I think they can recognize who they've been and choose to become someone different. But the choosing part matters. You can't accidentally become better. You have to want it." "What if the growth comes too late?" His voice was rough. "What if you hurt people in the process?" "Then you own it," she said simply. "You apologize without excuses. You do better going forward. But you don't get to pretend the hurt didn't happen just because you've evolved past who you were when you caused it." He nodded, filing her words away like sacred text. The following Tuesday changed everything. Had a charity gala. The kind of event he'd attended hundreds of times, champagne and strategically timed donations, conversations that mattered for reasons that had nothing to do with content. He'd planned to skip it, told to send his regrets. She'd looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "Sir, you're the keynote speaker. Your name is on the invitation." "Then cancel me." "I can't cancel you. She stopped, recalibrating. "What's going on with you?" "Nothing." "Sir, with respect, something is clearly going on. You're different. Distracted. You've skipped 3 major events in the past month. The board is starting to notice." That gave him pause. The board. Right. The people who expected him to be CEO and public figure, not who bought unnecessary batteries to make conversation with a cashier. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll go, but I'm leaving early." He told himself he'd stop by the store first, just for a moment, just to see her before he put the armor back on and became the person everyone expected. Grace was handling the evening rush when he arrived, moving between customers with practiced efficiency. When she saw him, her expression shifted, surprise, then pleasure, then confusion as she took in what he was wearing. He'd forgotten to change. Still had on the tailored suit, the watch that cost more than most cars, the subtle signals of wealth that usually screamed even when they whispered. "Wow," she said when he reached the counter. "Hot date." Something like that. His voice felt hollow. She rang up his single bottle of water with exaggerated ceremony. "Well, don't let me keep you. Wouldn't want you to be late for whatever this is." There was something in her tone, not jealousy but distance, the first distance they'd had. "Grace." "It's fine," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Have fun." He left feeling like he was standing on a cliff edge. The gala was everything he expected. 200 people in evening wear, making small talk that sounded profound and meant nothing. He gave his speech, shook hands, smiled for photos with donors whose names he'd forget by morning. His assistant found him at the bar an hour in. "The car's waiting whenever you're ready." "Thank you." "Are you sure you're all right, sir?" "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because you're not drinking your scotch." She nodded at his full glass. "You've been holding it for 20 minutes. He looked down, surprised. "I should go." "Yes, sir." The Tesla idled at the curb, driver standing at attention. Walked toward it, feeling the weight of the evening press against his shoulders. This was his world. These were his people. This was the life he'd built with ruthless precision. So why did it feel like wearing someone else's skin? He was reaching for the car door when he heard it. A voice, clear and close and impossible to ignore. "Is that you?" Froze, turned, and found Grace standing on the sidewalk 20 feet away, grocery bag in hand, staring at him like he'd materialized from thin air. She'd left early. That much registered. But everything else, the recognition dawning in her eyes, the way her expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something he couldn't name, that was happening too fast to stop. "Grace." "You're him," not a question, an accusation. "You're." His stomach dropped. "Yes." She took a step back. "The CEO of Industries. The one who—" She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling frantically. A news headline glowed between them. Industries CEO announces historic charity gala donation. There was his photo. 3 columns of text about his business empire, his net worth, his philanthropy. So this was all. She gestured vaguely between them, at the store across the street, at the past month of conversations. What? Some kind of social experiment? Rich guys slumming it to see how the other half lives? No, the word came out too fast, too desperate. It started that way, but it stopped being that. When? Her voice cracked. When did it stop? Before or after I told you about my rent? Before or after I talked about struggling to save money for a class you probably spend on lunch? Grace, please. You let me talk about my life like it mattered to you. You let me worry about hours getting cut while you probably own half the buildings in this city. Tears shone in her eyes, but her voice stayed steady. You want to know what hurts most? Not that you're rich. I don't care about that. It's that you saw me being honest and decided I couldn't handle honesty back. The words landed like bullets. I was afraid, he said, and it sounded pathetic even to himself. Afraid that if you knew who I was. Then let me decide that. Her voice rose, drawing stares from people exiting the gala. You don't get to make decisions for me. You don't get to protect me from information I deserved to have. That's not care. That's control. Behind him, the driver shifted uncomfortably. His world and hers were colliding in the worst possible way, under the worst possible circumstances. I'm sorry, said, knowing it wasn't enough. For what? Grace wiped her eyes roughly. For lying, for treating me like an experiment, or for getting caught. For all of it, for not trusting you with the truth from the beginning. She laughed once, sharp and bitter. The thing is, I probably would have understood. If you'd been honest at the start, if you'd said, hey, I'm trying to see what the world looks like without my name attached, I might have even helped. But you decided for me. You took away my choice. The weight of that settled in his chest like concrete. I need to go, she said, adjusting her grip on the grocery bag. Can we talk about this, please? What's left to talk about? She met his eyes, and the warmth that had always been there was gone. You got your answers, didn't you? You learned that kindness exists. Congratulations. I learned that even nice guys with nice smiles can lie. She turned and walked away, shoulders straight despite the tears he could see even from behind. Stood there long after she disappeared around the corner. The gala continued behind him. His driver waited. The world kept spinning with its usual indifference. But something fundamental had shifted, something he wasn't sure he could repair. That night, he sat in his penthouse and finally opened that first bag of groceries, the one from the very first night, still sitting on his counter. The milk had long since spoiled. The bread was stale, but he stared at it anyway, evidence of the moment everything had started. The moment he decided deception was justifiable if the reasons were pure enough. He'd been wrong. The days after were empty. Went through the motions, meetings, decisions, appearances, but none of it touched him. He didn't return to the store. Showing up would be pressure she didn't need. He'd taken enough without permission. Grace kept working. He knew because called once to verify store hours. Not surveillance, just knowing she was okay. At night, every moment he could have told the truth. Every opening she'd given him that he'd deflected with carefully crafted non-answers. 2 weeks passed like pulling teeth. Then Wednesday afternoon, walked into a neighborhood. He'd canceled his lunch meeting and just walked. That's when he saw her. Grace, crossing the street with a canvas bag, moving with purpose. She wore casual clothes, jeans, an old jacket, and looked more herself than she ever did in that uniform. Stood without thinking, pushed outside. Grace. She stopped, turned. Surprise crossed her face, then something that might have been resignation. What are you doing here? Coffee, you. Library, exam tomorrow. She shifted her weight, debating whether to walk away. He spoke first. I'm not here to explain or make excuses. I owe you an apology, a real one. She studied him. Okay, talk. I was wrong, not just in lying, but in thinking I had the right to turn your life into a test. You were never a lesson. You were a person who showed me kindness, and I should have honored that with honesty. Grace's jaw tightened. You know what the worst part is? Not the money. It's that you looked at my kindness and decided I couldn't handle reality. You're right. I know I'm right. Steel in her voice. I've been surviving my own life long enough to know what I can handle. He nodded, accepting it. Silence stretched between them. Why did you do it? She asked finally. Really, not the sanitized version, why? Considered lying, considered smoothing the edges, but she deserved more than that. Because for 15 years, I've only known transactional relationships, people who wanted something from me, and I wanted to know if kindness still existed when you stripped away status and money and all the things people usually want. He met her eyes. That's selfish. That's using you, but it's the truth. And what did you learn? Her voice was softer now, but no less firm. That I was testing the wrong thing. The question wasn't whether kindness exists. It obviously does. The question was whether I could accept it without trying to control it. And I couldn't. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to hear that I understand what I did wrong. Grace looked at him for a long time. Really looked, like she was trying to see past surfaces into whatever truth lived underneath. Do you know what hurt the most? She said finally. Not that you were rich. I figured you had money the third time you showed up. Nobody dresses that badly in jeans that expensive. A ghost of a smile. It was that you watched me be vulnerable and didn't return the favor. You let me talk about struggles while you held yours back. That's not connection. That's observation. The words landed like a hammer to the chest. You're absolutely right. I know, she adjusted her bag. I need distance, not because I hate you, I don't, but because I respect myself enough to not accept less than I deserve. And I deserve honesty, from the beginning, not when it becomes convenient. He nodded, stepping back physically to match what she was asking for emotionally. I understand. She started to walk away, then paused. For what it's worth, the person you were in that store, The one who admitted he didn't know which cereal to buy, who laughed at himself, who actually listened when I talked. That person was real. I could tell, and he was worth knowing. Then she was gone, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. Stood there long after she'd vanished, her final words echoing in his skull. That person was real. But was he real enough to exist outside the performance? Could he become that person without the safety net of anonymity? He didn't have an answer. But for the first time, he was willing to try to find one. Change happened in small, deliberate choices nobody noticed except those they affected. Started showing up differently, having real conversations with employees he'd never spoken to about their work, challenges, ideas. He listened the way Grace had taught him. Within weeks, he launched a program. Nothing with his name, just practical support for hourly workers, flexible scheduling, emergency assistance, training opportunities that didn't require polish. When executives questioned the expense, he gave them Grace's words. People deserve dignity without having to earn it. The program rolled out quietly. No fanfare, just implementation. Months passed. Winter silvered Manhattan streets. Saw Grace once, across a subway platform, too far to speak. Their eyes met for 1 second before she turned away. He didn't follow. Respecting her space was the least he could do. One Saturday in March, volunteered at a Queens community center. No driver, no announcement, just showed up and asked what needed doing. 4 hours packing food boxes alongside people who didn't know him and didn't care. It was the best 4 hours he'd had in months. He was carrying a box when he saw her. Grace stood near registration, talking to a coordinator, signing a clipboard. Same old jacket, hair in a practical ponytail. Their eyes met. Neither looked away. She finished and walked over slowly, like approaching something she wasn't sure she could trust. "Hey," she said. "Hey." Awkward silence. Then, "You volunteer here." "Started a few weeks ago. Saturdays." She nodded. "I've been coming since January. Funny we haven't run into each other." "Different times, maybe." "Maybe." She glanced at his box. "Need help?" "Sure." They carried it together to the truck, not speaking, just working. When they set it down, Grace said, "You look different." Good different or bad different? Just different, less polished, more real. He smiled. "That's intentional." "Is it working?" "I think so. I hope so. I've been trying to become the person I pretended to be." Grace crossed her arms defensively. "That's good." "I'm not asking for anything, Grace. I just want you to know I heard you, and I've been trying to do better." Long silence. Finally, "I've been angry for months, not at you specifically, at being lied to, feeling like my life was entertainment." "You had every right." "I know, but I've also been thinking about what you said, about transactional relationships, about being afraid." She paused. "I can't pretend it didn't happen, but I also can't pretend you haven't changed. I've been hearing things about your company, about you showing up differently." His throat tightened. "Who told you?" "A friend's sister works in your customer service department. She said management actually seems to care now." Grace shrugged. "I don't know if that's you, but..." "It's me, or I'm trying, every day." She nodded slowly. "That matters." Different silence now. Less hostile. More uncertain but suggesting possibility. "I'm not ready to pick up where we left off," Grace said. "To pretend it didn't hurt." "I'm not asking you to." "Good, but maybe we could start over. Actually over. No lies, just 2 people who volunteer at the same place." Something in his chest loosened. "I'd like that." No promises, no guarantees, just honesty from the beginning. "From the beginning," he agreed. She offered her hand, formal and absurd. "Hi, I'm Grace. I work retail and take online classes and worry I'm not good enough. He took it, smiling. I run a company and spent 15 years forgetting how to be human, still figuring out how to fix that. They shook. When they pulled apart, Grace was smiling too. Want to help sort donations? Yeah, I'd like that. 6 months later, the community center held a small celebration. Nothing fancy, folding chairs and homemade food and children running between tables while adults pretended to care about maintaining order. Grace stood near the back, laughing at something another volunteer had said. Her hair was different, shorter, more confident. She wore jeans and a t-shirt from the center, comfortable in her skin in a way that made his chest ache with something he'd learned to recognize as hope. He approached slowly, holding 2 paper plates loaded with potluck contributions. Peace offering, he said, offering one. She glanced at the food, then at him, eyebrows raised. You're getting bold. I'm getting hungry. Figured you might be too. Fair, she took the plate. Thanks. They found space at a table in the corner, away from the main chaos. Ate in companionable silence for several minutes. Can I tell you something? Grace said eventually. Always. I pulled out the receipt. That first night, the one you kept. He looked up, surprised. You knew about that? Of course I knew. You told me. She smiled. Drunk on cheap wine at the volunteer appreciation dinner last month. You were very sincere about it. He groaned. I'm never drinking around you again. Too late, the truth is out. She set down her fork. But I kept mine too. The receipt. It's in a drawer at home with other things I'm not sure what to do with. Why'd you keep it? She considered the question. Because it mattered. Even when I was angry, even when I felt like everything was a lie, that first conversation mattered. You really were lost. You really did need help choosing cereal. And I really did think you were just some regular guy who was bad at grocery shopping. I was, he said. I am, just with different complications than you thought. Everyone has complications. She met his eyes. That's not the point. What is the point? That the receipt proves something real happened. Before you became CEO and I became the girl you lied to, we were just 2 people talking. And that part was true. He felt something shift in his chest. It was. So I kept it. She shrugged, but there was weight to the gesture. As a reminder that real connections exist, even when the context is wrong. They fell quiet again. Around them, the celebration continued. Music someone's phone, laughter that came in waves, the particular chaos of community finding itself. Finally spoke. I kept something else too. Yeah. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and removed something small and folded. A piece of paper, worn at the edges from being carried. Grace took it, unfolded it carefully. Her handwriting stared back at her. A note she'd written months ago, left on the community center bulletin board asking for book recommendations for a class she was taking. You took this, her voice was soft. You mentioned the class. I wanted to help but didn't know how without being the rich guy throwing money at your problems. So I looked up recommendations, put together a list. Never gave it to you because... He trailed off. Because it would have revealed who you were. Yeah. She studied the note, then him. Do you still have the list? Of course. Can I see it? He pulled out his phone, found the file, handed it over. She scrolled through it slowly. Book titles, brief descriptions, honest assessments of difficulty and usefulness. No price tags, no offers to buy them. Just research done carefully with her actual needs in mind. This is really good, she said quietly. I wanted to help, even if I couldn't do it then. She handed back the phone. Yeah. I'm still not ready for everything, for whatever this could become, but I think I'm ready for more than just. His heart kicked. What does that mean? It means, she took a breath. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Real coffee, not convenience store coffee or volunteer center coffee. Actual sit-down conversation coffee. As friends, he asked carefully. As people getting to know each other honestly. The rest we can figure out as we go. He felt something bloom in his chest. Not certainty, not the finish line, just possibility stretching out ahead of them like new road. I would love that, he said. Good, she smiled, the same smile from that first night, but earned this time, built on truth. Tomorrow, there's a place near the library that I like. Tomorrow works. They stayed at the celebration until cleanup started. Worked side by side, stacking chairs and wiping tables, not saying much, just existing in the same space without performance or pretense. As they walked out into evening air, Grace said, "One rule for coffee." What's that? No more secrets. If I ask something, you answer honestly, even if it's uncomfortable. Deal, he said. Same goes for you. Agreed. They stood on the sidewalk as the community center lights flicked off behind them. The city moved around them in its endless rhythm, cars and voices, and the particular energy of New York deciding what to become next. I should head home, Grace said. Me too. Neither moved for several seconds. Then Grace laughed. This is awkward. Extremely. We're out of practice. We never had practice, pointed out. Last time was built on lies. True, she adjusted her bag. So, tomorrow, 3 o'clock, coffee place on Amsterdam. I'll be there. He paused. Yeah. Thank you for actually changing instead of just saying you would. The words settled in his chest like warmth. Thank you for letting me try. She nodded once, then walked away into the gathering dark. This time when she left, it felt different, not like an ending. Like a beginning. Stood watching the city breathe. Then he pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 15 years, called a regular car service. When it arrived, the driver made small talk, asked where he was headed, commented on weather. Answered, really answered, recognizing this was a person, not a service. You have a good evening, sir. You too, replied and meant it. In his penthouse that night, he didn't feel the usual emptiness. The space was still large, expensive, filled with art worth fortunes, but it felt different somehow. Like a place he lived, instead of a place he performed living. He made tea and sat by those windows overlooking Manhattan's endless lights. Somewhere in that city, Grace was probably reading, or watching television, or just existing quietly. She didn't know he was thinking about her. Didn't know he was already planning tomorrow, what to say, how to be honest when honesty meant admitting he was still figuring out who he was. But he hoped she was thinking about him too. Not CEO, not the man from news articles and board meetings. Just the person who'd learned that love wasn't about testing or proving or maintaining standards. It was about choosing truth even when truth was terrifying. About respecting people enough to let them decide with full information. About understanding that real leadership, like real love, began the moment you stopped hiding who you were. Tomorrow he'd sit across from Grace and tell her everything. Unvarnished, honest, who he'd been, who he was becoming, the mistakes made and ones he was probably still making. And she would listen and decide, and whatever she decided, he would respect. Because that's what you did when you cared about someone. You gave them truth and trusted them to know what to do with it. Outside, the city continued its endless dance. Millions of people making millions of choices, each adding up to something larger. Set down his tea and smiled. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow, they'd start writing a better story. One built on honesty from the very first word.